heard this, and it's always stuck with me about the where. You also have a place of like where you're gonna argue, right? Because if you're just randomly arguing throughout the house, now you're just creating this I'm gonna say trauma, I guess, throughout the house because you're bringing back like, have you ever been somewhere where you're like, you think of a conversation because you were in that room 4 years ago, and it's like, oh, I remember that conversation that happened right here, right? So if you start arguing everywhere throughout your house, now your house has just become this toxic environment, right? So it's like, okay, hey, this is where we're gonna have positive ongoing conversations, right? That could be like your dining room table where it's like we're going to sit down and we're going to have positive commitments looking forward. Like all conversations here are going to be positive, right? And then you have another spot where it's like, hey, you know what? We got to talk this out. We have to argue about this. We have to go back and forth between this. And I'm using argue not as like a you're yelling at each other. It's a dispute. It's a conversation where you might get passionate about each other's side, but it's like the conversation has to happen. Like, where does that happen, right? And you're creating these spaces in your life to where, like, okay, when we have this type of conversation, this is where we're going to be because we know that in this environment, we're either going to, propel forward or we're going to, have the argument here.
I'll say to that too, a personal note. I know we kind of learned this trial by fire, if you will, because Aaron tried to have a more passionate conversation, let's call it, while we were at a restaurant, while we were out at dinner. And I had to leave. I said, we need to leave because that wasn't the place for me that I could have that kind of conversation. I felt like other people could hear. I felt like, the waitress was going to come over at like the worst time and it was just going to make it even more awkward. So you need to know where you can and cannot have these types of conversations. Again, if you want the other person to perceive it well and you want to get on the same page with them, because you can keep using that as ammo for yourself by saying like, I try to have all these conversations with you. Where, when, how? Because if it's not where, when, and how your partner is going to perceive them, why why are you even trying?